Time for spring. Everybody said it was time for spring. From the attic, Irene got her bicycle that had 3 wheels on it, and then that would make it a tricycle, not a bicycle, but, details. And she tested the bell on the handlebar to make sure it was ready to ride. And then, as it so often does when it's time for spring, it snowed. Didn't snow here, dang it. Everybody said the snow would be gone soon, but under a chilly gray sky, the snow lay there, covering the buds on the trees and the grass that had already begun to get green. Irene left her bicycle in the house. Tricycle. And went outdoors. She frowned at the snow for a while. Then she decided to make a snowman. I'll make a very little snowman, she said, because she had very little interest left in things that had to do with winter. Silly child. She got a floppy old hat from a pile of old clothes in the cellar. She got 3 bits of gravel for the buttons of the snowman's coat, 2 other bits for its eyes, and 2 short twigs for its eyebrows. She rolled up enough snow for a very little snowman's body, legs, arms, and head. Irene had a great deal of practice making snowmen all winter. This one's very lifelike for a snowman. He looks angry. Irene said as she put on its nose, "Too bad it won't last very long." "What won't?" said the snowman. Irene looked around to see who had spoken. Then she looked back at the snowman and her eyes opened wide. The snowman was fiddling with his nose, pushing it around on his face. "Can't you put a nose on straight?" he said. "There, that's better now, isn't it?" Irene didn't think it was a bit better, but she nodded. "Here's your hat," she said. "Thank you." The snowman took the hat and put it on his head. "Now, what were we talking about? What won't last very long?" "Winter," said Irene, and she made a motion with her arm that took in all the snow around her in a general sort of way. "It's time for spring." "Ho, ho, ho!" The snowman laughed a hearty, wintry laugh, and he gleefully kicked up a spray of snow. "Don't worry about it. Get your sled." Irene got her sled. With the snowman stomping merrily along beside her, he trudged up the hill. "About spring," she said, and she hesitated, wondering how to tell the snowman that when spring came, he wouldn't be there. "I mean, I'm not worried about it." "Why should you be?" "Why should you be?" said the snowman. "Spring won't come while I'm here." "What?" Irene stared at him. "While I'm here, spring won't come." The snowman picked up the rope that had dropped from Irene's hand, and, with a happy grunt, he flung himself on the sled and went coasting down the hill. "Wait!" Irene slid down the hill after him. They were supposed to go together. At the bottom, the snowman got off and started back up, leaving the sled behind him. Irene went down to get it. When she was halfway up, the snowman called to her from the top of the hill. "Fun, isn't it?" "I guess so," said Irene, pulling up the sled. "But—" "Yes, great fun," said the snowman, taking the rope from her as she reached him. This time Irene got her knees on the back of the sled and she tried to hold on, but on the way down the snowman who was steering hit a bump and she fell off. She rolled to a stop a few feet behind the sled and heard the snowman's cheery laughter. "Great, great fun." He's a meanie. "But I've done so much sledding all winter long," said Irene. "And you can do so much more of it," said the snowman, starting up the hill again. "It's going to be such a nice long winter." Irene picked up the sled rope. "Do you mean spring really is not going to come because you're here?" "How can it?" The snowman patted his stomach. "I'm made of snow." "Yes," said Irene, "I made you." "Then you know," the snowman continued up the hill. Irene threw down the rope. "I'm tired of sledding," she said. "All right." The snowman turned and rubbed his hands together agreeably. "Let's do something else for a while." "Do what?" Irene looked over at her house, wishing it was time for her to be called in for lunch. "Let's make a snowman," said the snowman. No, said Irene. Let's build a snow fort and have a snowball fight. The snowman clapped his hands enthusiastically. Well, all right, Irene said. Under the snowman's direction, Irene rolled snow into blocks and built a snow fort. When the snow fort was as high as Irene's chest, which was as high as the snowman's head, he stopped her. That's high enough, he said, getting behind it. Now go down the hill and come up and storm the fort. Irene sighed and went down the hill, where she made 3 small snowballs. Ready? She called. Ready, came the snowman's voice from behind the snow fort. Irene started up the hill, throwing her snowballs. One hit the fort, the other 2 sailed over it. A remarkably aimed snowball rose over the wall of the fort and hit Irene above the collar of her snowsuit. Cold, wet snow trickled down her neck. Waving her hand, Irene turned and started walking in the other direction. I have to go home to lunch now. We've hardly begun, said the snowman, coming out from behind the fort. I've been snow fighting all winter, Irene said, continuing on her way toward her house. Anyway, you won. The snowman hurried after her. I'll think of something else that will be fun to do, he said, catching up with Irene as she reached her front yard. Hurry up, I'll wait for you here. I'm supposed to eat slow, said Irene, going up the walk to the house. At the lunch table, everybody talked about the snow and said it was time for spring. He says it will stay winter as long as he's here, Irene told them, looking at her plate. Who? They asked. A snowman I made. Irene felt sorry, because everybody wanted it to be spring. Don't worry about it, they told her. Spring will be here. They seemed so very sure of it that Irene began to feel sorry for the snowman again. How do you know spring will be here? She asked them. It always has come other years, they said. I never made a snowman other years like this one, Irene said. Finish your milk, everybody told her. I can imagine both of her parents going, finish your milk at the same time. Irene drank her milk thoughtfully. She got down from her chair and went outside. The snowman turned and waved as Irene came down the walk. I've thought of something, he said, rubbing his hands together excitedly. So have I, said Irene. I think you ought to go away. Go where? The snowman said in surprise. To the North Pole, or someplace where it's cold. Why, said the snowman, it's cold here. To be on the safe side, Irene said, on account of spring. We've been over all that, the snowman said, as he took Irene's arm. Stop worrying about me. Let's slide on the pond. But if spring comes, you can't be here, said Irene, and she was surprised to see the snowman cheerfully nodding agreement. Spring, no snowman. He raised one hand, then he raised the other. Snowman, no spring. The first part's true, said Irene, and the last part follows, said the snowman. Here we are at the pond. Let's slide. He scooted toward the small pond and skimmed across a path of glassy ice that the wind had cleared of snow. I've done an awful lot of sliding all winter, said Irene as she ran a few steps and slid out on the ice. And you still need more practice, said the snowman as he watched Irene come to a stop halfway across the pond. But we'll keep at it, and you'll be as good as I am, along about the 4th of July. Suddenly, the ice cracked about Irene's feet, and she sank to her knees in icy water. The pond wasn't frozen. Irene clambered out and stamped her wet feet. It's getting too warm. It's getting colder, said the snowman. He was right. The northeast wind had shifted to the north. Irene shivered and started back to the house. The snowman trotted along beside her, enjoying the cold. I don't suppose you'll be allowed out again this afternoon, he said as they reached the gate. But tomorrow's another day. Will you be here? Irene said, shivering. Certainly. The snowman looked at the sky. It will be great winter weather, too. If that wind switches back to the northeast, we'll have more snow. Irene sniffled 3 times. Then she burst into tears. I don't want it to be winter anymore. Silly girl. The snowman looked at her in amazement. You don't like winter? I like it. For a while. Irene spaced her words with sobs. But now it's time for spring, and I like spring too. You like spring? The snowman stared in disbelief. Yes. Slowly turning his head, the snowman looked up at the sky, at nothing in particular. I understand, he said quietly. I don't see how you can, quite. Irene rubbed her tears with the back of her mitten. About spring, I mean. It's why you want me to go away, really, isn't it? The snowman continued to stare at the sky. Why didn't you say so? Can't you go to the North Pole, said Irene, and come back next year? It's a long walk, said the snowman, gazing into the distance. Both ways. I'll think about it. Goodbye, Irene said, and she started up the walk. As she opened the front door, she looked back. The snowman was still there, thinking about it. Everybody noticed her wet feet, and because she was sniffling, they quickly got Irene into a hot bath, and then to bed. They brought her dinner to her room. It may be spring tomorrow, she told them. It's time for it, everybody said. I don't know why they keep saying everybody instead of her mother and father said. And the wind has shifted all the way around to the southwest. Next morning, they kept Irene in bed to be sure she had no sign of a cold, but by the middle of the afternoon, everybody agreed, not her mother and father, everybody agreed there was no reason to keep her in on such a day. Irene got dressed and ran to the door. She looked around outside. All the snow was gone. She ran down the walk. On the grass, she found the snowman's floppy old hat. He went away, but he left his hat. I'll save it for him till next year. Then she ran back to the house and got her bicycle. Tricycle. And she rode up and down the walk, ringing the bell on her handlebar, because spring was here.